Welcome to Relatively Weird, the podcast where a couple of cousins get together and talk about everything weird. I'm Kim.
And I'm Jilli.
Let's get into it.
So, this week is Jilli's story. And as you will notice, I am not well.
Physically this time.
Physically not well. I'm sorry. No, I am getting over a cold. So, this week, I want to tell you the story about the Yuba County Five.
Okay.
Have you heard of the Yuba County Five?
I have not.
Do I sound okay at this?
Yes.
Okay. I struggle to call this a mysterious disappearance because it was at first a mysterious disappearance and ended up being a mystery instead. I don't know.
No longer a disappearance?
No.
Okay.
Yes and no. All right. So Yuba County is in California.
Oh.
And our story takes place in February 1978. So I'm going to start with our five main characters who went missing.
Mysteriously. Okay.
So these five men were friends with varying degrees of mental abilities. They range from 24 to 32. So they were called the boys. They weren't really boys, but we'll start with Jack Hewitt. So Jack Hewitt is the youngest. There are two Jacks in this story, so I will try to include their last name when I'm talking about them.
Okay.
Jack Hewitt is 24 years old. Was 24 years old. He was illiterate and had a speech impediment. He was unable to hold down a job, but he worked on his dad's farm, and he rode a dirt bike. So, in the 1970s and before, it wasn't super common for people to have mental abilities or disorders to be diagnosed.
Right.
So, I believe only one out of the five of these were actually diagnosed with something. And they all knew each other through the Gateway Project, which I will get into after I introduce you to them. We talked about Jack Hewitt. We're going to talk about Ted Weir. Ted Weir
Okay.
and Jack Hewitt are best friends. Ted is 32. He was friendly. He worked at the local grocery store as a bag boy. Didn't have a lot of common sense. No driver's license. Ted was afraid of the dark, the woods, and fire. He also wasn't super interested in, like, hunting. I think his dad took him a few times, and he was just like, nah. And like I said, best friends with Jack Hewitt.
Okay. And I'm so sorry. How old was Jack again?
Jack was 24.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
So Jack Madruga now. He's 30 years old at the time of this incident. He drove a 69 Mercury Montego, which he loved. So he had his license. He often worked on his car. And he once drove a truck for the army.
Oh.
So he's socially awkward and shy. And Jack Madruga was best friends with Bill Sterling.
Okay.
We'll get into Bill. So we're almost there. This is the fourth guy. 29 years old, Bill Sterling. Energetic, social, outgoing. He was a Christian. He would read the Bible to hospital patients. He was considered kind of lazy. But again, like, I don't know. It's hard to sort of say why at that time.
Right.
People's interpretations of people's behaviors in the 1970s, without what we know today, we're not sure why he was the way he was.
Well, and right. I think some people, if you don't have the same interests as them, for example,
Yeah.
they're like, nah, then you're lazy.
Right.
Or whatever.
So he's, as I think I stated, he's best friends with Jack Madruga.
Mm-hmm.
Now the last guy to join the group, he wasn't an outsider, but, he didn't have like a buddy best friend. He liked them all.
Oh, he's a fifth wheel.
He kind of. Is Gary Mathias. So he's 25 years old at this time. He was also in the Army.
Okay.
And he was diagnosed with schizophrenia.
Okay.
So he had a kind of a violent criminal past, but I think that had a lot to do with him not being able to be medicated for the right thing.
Right.
And yeah, so I think he's like 2 years into this group of friends. Everyone else had known each other for much longer. And as I stated before, they were all part of this community called the Gateway Project. Now, the Gateway Project is for basically adults who have mental disabilities or illnesses and, get together and socialize.
Yeah, like we have that today.
Yeah.
Probably maybe less therapeutic, though. I feel like today you get together and they like almost like occupational therapy and stuff like that.
Is that, I know for like younger people, it's a lot in like schools and stuff. You have like the, what is it, the buddy program?
Yeah, and then they like, well, I don't want to say the name of it but there's like collaboratives that get together and kind of take them to different. Okay, so kind of like that, but probably less therapy related.
Yeah, I think they were just kind of like, these guys are like you, let's
hang out.
Yeah.
Okay.
So also Gary, you'll have to edit it if I've already said, but he has been medicated at this time for 2 years. So he's been in this group, he's been medicated. He also has therapy. I don't know if it's within the group, but he has therapists who encourage him to journal, all that. So he's doing great, pretty much.
That's good in the 70s.
He held down a job, and he was pretty protective of the other men. So even though he wasn't anyone's like best friend, he was probably the most capable mentally out of the five.
Okay.
Or that's what people would say.
Yeah.
In the Gateway Project, they also had a basketball team called the Gateway Gators. So this incident takes place, like I said, on February 24th, 1978. On February 25th, the boys were due to have their own basketball game.
Okay.
But on February 24th, they decided to go to a UC Davis game in Chico, which I'm actually not sure how far Chico is. Not far, though. It was basically a straight shot with like one turn from Yuba County City. Nope. Yuba County. So Jack Madruga in his 69 Mercury Montego, I almost said Chevy, I don't know, drove all the boys from their homes to the game. Now, before they left, a few of the boys, they were all super excited to go to their own game the next day. It was a tournament for the Special Olympics.
Oh, wow.
Where
Nice.
whoever had won would get an all-expenses-paid trip to LA. So they really wanted to go. Yeah. Their own game, but also getting hyped up at this UC Davis game. So much so that their plans were just to go, watch the game. They had laid out their own uniforms. There you go. The boys had laid out their own uniforms the night before, so every intent of coming home the next day. Is this a story that's familiar to you?
Not at all.
Okay, good.
No. No.
I was like, oh no, she knows about like true crime stuff.
I was actually stuck on the uniforms part. I was going to say basketball ensembles. But anyway.
So they're on their way to the basketball game. Witnesses say they would show up. So the game was from about 8 p.m. and ended around 9:50.
Oh.
So they stopped at Bears Market for snacks around 10 p.m. after the game. A store clerk would say she remembered them coming in because she was actually really annoyed because they were going to close soon. And she was like...
Well, jeez. God forbid.
So they bought things like Coke, milk, candy. And then February 25th came the next day. None of the boys had made it home. And the parents were like, This is very unusual. They've never done this before, and they contacted each other. Everybody had the same story. The police were finally notified, and a search was started. And they missed their basketball game, obviously.
So you actually answered a question that I had, which was, what was the living situation? So they all lived, each of them lived with their parents?
I believe each of them lived with their parents, yes.
Okay, perfect.
Eventually, the 69 Mercury Montego was found at 10 a.m. the next day by a man named Bill Neal. He's a forest ranger for the Plumas National Forest, which is 70 miles in the opposite direction of their house. So the boys all live, in the same neighborhood. 70 miles. And as I said, from Chico to their house, it was basically a straight shot in like one turn. So there was no way they could get that turned around.
Okay.
The 69 Montego was stuck at the snow line on the mountain, 4,400 feet in elevation.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like, is that like a mountain? Basically, is that on the way to anything else? No. Or is that like a mountain road that you would be going specifically up the mountain?
It would be a mountain road.
Okay.
That they had actually described as like half paved, half not. So let's just say you were lost. You'd be like, okay, we definitely didn't.
Right. This is wrong.
Right. Like we did not encounter like a dirt road on the way to Chico.
No, right. This does not look familiar.
So around the bend, maybe like, accounts differ, but it's like maybe 40 to like 100 feet ahead. There was also a VW Beetle that was stuck in the snow. The trunk lid was popped open and looked like somebody had been trying to work on it. And there was feces next to this vehicle. Bill assumed it was from like a dog. So he just was like, okay, well, this is also a popular skiing area. Maybe they were like, I mean, the vehicles weren't so stuck that it was like no one could push them out.
Okay.
So he just thought, okay, well, they'd probably just deal with it after whoever these people were, got back from skiing.
He doesn't realize yet who the Mercury belongs to.
Not yet.
That's why. Okay. All right, perfect.
Nope. The Mercury Montego also had its driver's side window rolled down.
Okay.
Which is weird. Because it's like, even if you're stuck in the snow, roll up your window. That's weird. And all the doors were unlocked.
Roll up your stupid window.
This is bizarre, as we know. Obviously, the actual ranger doesn't know what happened yet. But Jack Madruga, whose vehicle it was, had immense pride in his vehicle, and he wouldn't let anyone else drive it. So keep that in mind. It's weird. It's weird for him.
Yeah.
He also worked on this vehicle all the time, and there were 5 men in this vehicle. So he would have known, okay, somebody get out and push. This is what we're assuming. The vehicle was hotwired by the police, so the police were notified by, I believe, Bill's mom finally called them. They found it, hotwired the vehicle. There was still gas in it, and the engine was fine. So the only thing that was weird about it was that it looked like it was a little bit stuck.
Okay. And obviously the keys are gone.
The keys are gone.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So the first day, they finally were like, all right, we gotta obviously search for these boys. There was a terrible ice storm, and they had to basically abandon the search, which also erased all the clues.
True.
That they had.
Right. So like footprints in the snow.
So the next bit of evidence would not be uncovered until 4 months later, in June. And in this time, the police had put out a $1,200 reward to find the boys, which I threw that into an inflation calculator, and it is about $5,600 today. What's that face?
Maybe this sounds judgmental, because I guess it probably came from the families. But that doesn't seem like a lot. Especially
if there's 5 of them.
5 of them.
Yeah.
And also, if there were foul play, you're not going to risk your life to narc on somebody for $5,000 today, will you?
So
does somebody?
Well, what's interesting about this, actually, and I did not put this in my notes, but I do remember, they had clues coming in, people reporting things all over the country and abroad as well. And they're like,
what?
For $1,200, which I don't know why. Yes. Maybe people wanted to be the center of attention. Maybe they wanted, I don't.
Maybe the story kind of got them.
Yeah.
You find out they're going to go to the basketball game for the Special Olympics. Like, oh.
I know.
So sweet and lovely.
I know. All right, so we're in June now.
Okay.
4 months later. So motorcyclists would enter the Plumas County National Forest, and they usually do this after the snow has ebbed away to check on the ranger stations in the park. Now, these ranger stations were basically like trailers, like travel trailer type things. There's work in there. These trailers were outfitted with like a year's supply of food, and heating supplies like blankets, torches, just any kind of survival stuff.
Okay.
One trailer that they found had the front window smashed in, and there was a bad smell coming from it.
Oh no.
So outside the window, there were scattered ration cans. In total, they found, so reports differ, but one said it was like 36 cans, another one, it was less than 100. Okay. Not enough to feed 5 guys for 4 months.
True. Okay.
So inside, they found tennis shoes by the door, more empty ration cans, some playing cards that looked like they had been used, a wallet, and a gold watch on a bedside table. In the bed, they found a body wrapped under several blankets. So it looked like the body was wrapped probably by somebody else because it was almost like they were tucked in.
Yep.
And the body ended up being that of Ted Weir.
Aww.
So most of his face had rotted away, and his feet were frostbitten and gangrenous. And the cause of death would be pulmonary edema resulting from pneumonia.
Oh,
so
okay.
The wallet next to his body was his, and then the clothes he was wearing kind of determined it was him. But the tennis shoes, so Ted's shoes were gone, but the tennis shoes were Gary's.
Okay.
So Gary must have been there. He might have taken Ted's shoes. So what was left of Ted's face had beard growth that was determined to be around 8 to 13 weeks. And he was clean shaven the day he went to the basketball game. So at best, he had died like 8 weeks before they found him. So the sheds on the property, so I had told you that there was supply stuff. So it was in 2 different sheds. Both were broken open by a crowbar. So there was food missing, obviously, and you'd seen the cans left over, and none of the heat supplies were touched.
Oh.
For some reason. Now, this is weird because some of the men were in the army.
Right.
They would know
yeah,
how to use some of these things. So from where the 69 Montego was found, this trailer was 20 miles up the mountain.
Goodness.
Yeah. I'm not recalling if I mentioned earlier, but some of the boys' parents, being parents, were like, hey, bring a jacket when you go.
Yes.
It's February. To which they were like, Ma, no. So they were not appropriately address. Jesus.
They were not going to make it to the right house with that address.
The men were not appropriately dressed to hike 20 miles up a mountain.
Yowza.
Yeah. So this was determined because there are, and I think we can probably put this on our social media so that people will be able to see a map. Two of my stories now have consisted of needing a map to understand what the heck I'm talking about. The trailer was around... There were two ways to get to this trailer, basically. There was the steeper way, which was 11 miles up. Mm-hmm. And then there was the less steeper way, but the longer way. It was basically like a winding path, which was 20 miles. Now, it was determined they likely taken the 20 miles trail because maybe like a day or so before, a snowcat had kind of packed down the 20-mile trail, and they probably went that way because it's less dangerous to be in a snowcat, but steeper side of the mountain, so...
Well, and they're like wearing tennis shoes and stuff.
Yeah.
So, right, you're going to go the easier way, I would think.
Correct. So 11 miles from the Montego, and also on this trail, the bodies of Jack Madruga and Bill were found. Now, I will remind you that Jack Madruga and Bill were best friends. So both of their bodies were scavenged by, the wildlife and the elements and all that. It was determined that they had succumbed to hypothermia, although, I mean, there's only so much you can tell from that time. And people might have assumed, like, okay, so let's just leave foul play aside for a second.
Right.
Maybe one of the boys slowed down and the other one didn't want to leave him. And they had both succumbed to the elements. So 2 miles north of the trailer. So again, a map's probably going to have to be used. It's kind of like a backwards question mark to this trailer, the way the trail is.
Okay.
So it's like the hook part of the backwards.
Yes, I gotcha. I'm seeing it.
Okay. So 2 miles north of the trailer, it's not weird for that to be the case, was Jack Hewitt's jacket.
Okay.
And this was found by his dad, who had joined,
Jesus.
who had joined the search at that time. Mm-hmm. And when he picked up the jacket, Jack's spine rolled out.
What? Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Oh, it's horrible.
I
feel like... And I know you can't tell them not to do it. And I feel like if I were in that position, I would do it. But I feel like family members just should not be part of searches.
But don't you...
For their
like,
own
but you
sanity.
know, it's true. Like, I feel like it would be really easy to say that.
I know.
Not having family... I mean, like, what if...
No, I know.
Because, like, you want to... Because also, you are able to recognize, like, personal items.
True.
He knew that was his jacket.
And I suppose, depending on your... Now, okay. I don't know if you were going to go into this, so I apologize for jumping ahead. Do we sort of have a timeline for when each of these things were found? So, like, was it a significant amount of time?
I don't think so. I think some of my research... At best, I think it was, like, days. I mean, they were on the right trail at that point, so...
But the jacket was found last?
Yes.
Because I just feel like... It's one thing if you have hope that they're living, and you just go, I'm going to find them, and he's probably hunkered down somewhere. But, I mean, so far, 3 of the 5 have been found dead, as far as you know, so... Oh, God. Anyway, well, that poor man.
Yeah. Well, actually, 4 of the 5 have been found dead. So there's Jack Madruga and Bill. Mm-hmm. And then Jack Hewitt was the one with the jacket. And then Ted's body was in the trailer.
Yes.
A quarter mile from the trailer, three blankets and a flashlight were found, just discarded. And Gary's body was never found.
Ugh.
So what do you think?
Okay. Jack Hewitt.
Mm-hmm.
Was anything else ever found besides his spine?
I mean, his body and his body, jeepers.
Yeah, just
his jacket. His jacket and his spine,
but that's
that was
it.
in it. I can't say either way. I do think that people, that talk about this will be like, his spine rolled out, and, that's what they focus on. I don't.
Oh, right. Yeah. So I imagine in that area of California,
yes,
the predator situation is probably like a mountain lion, black bear.
Yeah.
Which aren't really going for people
I
unless
don't know.
it's convenient.
Although grizzlies, they're in the western part, right? Or are they a little more
southern?
I mean, there's mountains, so no.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, maybe. So, I mean, I just sort of assume Gary has been consumed entirely. Is Gary gonna pop up somewhere? So here I am.
Well, let's talk about the witnesses.
Witnesses?
So
the Volkswagen?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh my God, you're so good.
Well, I mean, what the hell happened to those people?
All right.
Is my question.
So, Joseph Shones.
Okay.
The police would learn that the VW stuck in the snow that night belonged to a Joseph Shones. So, the police would interview him multiple times, and the last time being from a hospital bed. Now, we'll get into why he was in the hospital. But it will be determined that he was probably physically the closest to the boys at the time of their disappearance. So the first... Joseph has a lot of stories. The first story he told the police was that he was driving up the mountain on... So the 24th was a Friday.
Yes, okay.
He was driving up the mountain to check out a cabin that his family would be renting that weekend. Why you would go up on a Friday night, by yourself, I don't know. He noticed that the abandoned Mercury Montego, and then after driving a little bit of ways, he got stuck himself. So he got out of his vehicle and started to push when he said he began to have a heart attack. So he has had heart troubles in the past and said he kind of knew what the signs were.
Horrible place for a heart attack.
Yes. He proceeded to vomit and defecate in the snow, and then forced himself back into his vehicle and rest, and then eventually fell asleep.
Is that how heart attacks work? You just gonna take a nap?
This is what he has told the police.
I feel like that's not real. But okay.
At around 11:30 midnight, he heard whistling, like someone was trying to get someone's attention. And he saw headlights of a rusty red pickup truck that was parked behind the Mercury Montego.
Okay.
He noted that there was around 6 or 7 people around both vehicles, and one looked like it was a woman holding a baby. When he called for help, he said all of the people got back into the truck and then left down the mountain.
What? Wow.
Yeah.
That's rude. It's awful.
Yeah. So he said he got back into his vehicle, and he said he saw flashlights in the tree line, and when he said he yelled for help, the flashlights cut off.
Just a bunch of jerks.
And eventually, he was like, well, I'll just get back in my car. He put the heat on, and then around 4 a.m., he ran out of gas. He walked back down the mountain.
No, he didn't. I'm sorry. Am I mistaken in how heart attacks work? You walk down a mountain after? Next day?
This is what he told the police.
I have one too many edibles and I wouldn't walk down a mountain the next day.
Yeah.
What are you talking about, sir?
So he says he walked down the mountain and he was picked up by a good Samaritan and he was driven home. How you feeling about Joseph's stories?
He's a teller of stories, that Joseph.
Yes.
It's just, okay. Yeah, miraculous recovery.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Okay.
Okay. Well,
So-
maybe not.
So the police keep coming back to Joe because his story's interesting to say the least.
Sketchy at best,
Yeah.
Joseph.
So the last time they interview him is from the hospital where it does appear like he had some sort of heart trouble.
Okay.
Whether or not he had an actual heart attack, we don't necessarily know.
No. We do not.
His story changes a little bit. So it goes from him visiting a cabin to having been run off the road by a vehicle tailgating him.
Why wouldn't you say that in the first? Why would you hide that?
Because Joseph is a little bit of a drinker.
Okay.
So he also tells them that he saw the pickup, but that it was maybe like 2 to like 12 people.
That's
Yeah.
almost the same thing.
Yeah.
2 and 12.
Right.
Yes, of course.
Which also, pickup. Okay.
Where?
You're going to put, I mean, are they just riding in the back?
1978, they don't have king cabs
Yeah.
either. In
Right.
February, you're in the bed of a truck? No.
Joseph said that he may have hallucinated the truck entirely due to his heart attack. Because that's what happens when you have a heart attack. You're in so much pain. I mean, I don't... Listen.
Yeah, no. We would never pretend to know what that feels like.
I am not... I've never heard of hallucinations being a part of a heart attack.
But also, can we talk about why, if you hallucinated a pickup truck, wouldn't you be like, oh, I don't think that was there. So like, even if you were going to lie about in the beginning, I don't think you would go so far as to be like, there were approximately a dozen people.
Right.
The details just would be so unnecessary.
Yeah.
At that point.
Right.
There was a truck. It fucked me up. I don't know. That's so weird.
It is very weird. So, I want to say he was interviewed like 3 separate times. By the time they had interviewed him the last time he was at the hospital, the nurses at the hospital said that he was pretty inconsolable by the time he reached there. No one could figure out why.
Oh, jeez.
And as I said, okay, so he's the town drunk.
Okay. Well,
He's also a compulsive liar.
oh my God, Joseph.
And he's known to be rather unpleasant to the townspeople. He would often run his car off the road and then leave it abandoned somewhere.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Okay.
He once tried operating like a weed growing business, but his product kept getting stolen. So he was just like, okay, screw that. I'm not doing that anymore. The night of the 24th, he had been seen drinking at the Bush Creek bar, and then he bar hopped to the Mountain House bar before heading up the mountain. And the Good Samaritans, they did catch up with those people that picked him up. He was picked up.
Okay.
Though he did make it down the mountain, but whether or not he had a heart attack
Right.
remains to be determined. The Good Samaritans also said that Joe never mention to them that he had a heart attack. He just...
He didn't. No. Joe's a liar.
And they drove him from...
He pooped himself because he was drunk.
Yes.
Like, let's be honest.
Yeah. And that's probably why he didn't tell the police the correct story.
Yeah.
Which, so there was the Yuba County Police and then I think the Butte County Police that were on this. So my one thing was like, he must be known around town. So I don't know who had interviewed him. I don't know if it was like a separate town that just didn't know who he was. So they drove him from a lodge that he ended up in after he came back down from the mountain. And the witnesses at the lodge say that he had his head in his hands saying, I should have done this 2 years ago, with no further explanation. But he's not, I mean, he's unpleasant, but he wasn't ever known to be, like, violent.
Yeah.
So the people who drove him said that he criticized their driving, and when they got to his house, he just left and didn't thank them. And then he went to bed, and his wife was like, hey, where's your car? Which at this point, she's already like, she's familiar. She's just like, okay, where did it end up? He told her she and another man collected the vehicle. It was out of gas. So the police were interviewing him for a final time. They kept asking for the same sort of details, maybe the same sort of questions. I think that's sort of a tactic that police do.
Yes.
So he stops, and he leans back in his hospital bed and says, I get the feeling you guys think I know something about these dudes. Which, Joe, you're being real weird about stuff.
So, and they have told him at this point that that's why they're interviewing
So he
him,
knows
right?
that there's like a...
So it's not just like,
He knows.
He comes out with it out of nowhere.
Right.
All right.
But also, I feel like, they had known, what was it? About 24 hours later, they contacted the police, and then obviously, I believe his vehicle was there when the ranger found it.
Right.
I feel like they may have collected it by the time the police came.
True. Okay. Oh, that's a bummer.
Yeah.
So they couldn't even really search it.
So nothing was really gained from speaking to him anymore. I mean,
useless.
Yeah. And in 2004, he passed away, so we'll never know.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
From what? Do we know?
I don't know. A heart attack, perhaps? I don't know. So there were other witnesses. Now, like I said, they had heard from other people across basically the globe, because I don't even know why this was like an international story, but I mean, it is a weird one, I suppose.
Yes. Yeah.
Five grown men are missing. Five grown men were missing, and then later
not missing.
I suppose it is kind of a big story.
But it is weird because, especially internationally.
Yeah.
Because I would imagine that the police at no point thought these men got on a plane and went someplace else. Mm-mm. So it's very strange that they got international leads.
True. Actually, no, that's not something I considered, but because here's the thing. Okay, so obviously people were not as nice or understanding of mental disabilities and mental capabilities. Some people were like, yeah, well, they were idiots and they just got themselves lost and blah, blah, blah. There's obviously more to the story than something that simple and kind of stupid, because two of the men were in the army and a lot of them, they were capable. I mean, I think the most mentally disabled one was, I believe, Jack Hewitt, but he had, all the other men were looking out for him.
Well, right, like you say, I mean, the army thought that they were plenty capable.
Yeah.
So, you know. worst.
I know. So there were some other witnesses. Key witnesses? I don't know. What's a key witness? All right. We'll talk about
the key to the mystery. I don't know.
Okay, let's talk about the gas station attendant.
Let's talk about
in Brownsville. It's just Brownsville. Why did I say that? It's Mary's Country Store is what this gas station / store is.
That sounds delightful.
The store clerk and the owner agreed that they had seen two guys in a red pickup truck when the attendant started her shift. And she said, by the way, one of the men smiled at her. She thought he may be mentally disabled.
They're sure there weren't 12 people in the pickup truck.
Actually, she said that she saw 4 total.
Oh, okay.
She claimed to see 2 other men at the phone booth making a call. And the phone booth guys would come in, get a snack, and then leave with the men in the red pickup truck. But the date she said they saw them was February 25th. And she said she also saw them on February 26th. So that's Saturday and Sunday. The days after they went missing.
Right.
2 days in a row, which is weird. So the clerk had picked out of a photo lineup all of the boys except for Gary. But the photos were shown to the public at the time. And there's $1,200 on the line. This is all weird. Because why are the boys in a different vehicle now? Mind you, it's a red pickup truck. The same color and kind that Joseph Jones said he saw and then didn't see and then saw and then maybe I didn't, but I don't know. There might be 2 people, 12, I don't know.
Like a red pickup truck.
Yeah.
How common is, I mean.
Well, right. That's interesting. But this isn't the last time we're going to hear about this red pickup truck from somebody else named Charles Hendrick. Charles Hendrick was a deer hunter, and he had a cabin sort of up at, it says, Bucks Lake, which I guess is in the Yuba County forest. And he said... Now, accounts differ. One person said it was a year. Someone else said 2 to 3. But it was at least a year in the future of this disappearance. He saw, supposedly, Ted Weir with an older man and a younger boy up at his cabin. Which I'm like, did you leave it open? Like, were they just supposedly hunting deer? And he's like, hey, you can't be here. And he said that they all left in this red pickup truck. Now, he said he was pretty sure it was Ted Weir. They asked Ted's mom, do these people sound familiar to you? And she was like, well, he doesn't like hunting. I mean, he wouldn't do that, but I do know that he knows somebody who has a red pickup truck and, has kids, so I don't know, like maybe he did go with them. But when they tried to follow up about who owned this red pickup truck, they couldn't. They just reached a dead end, which is all that the sources that I have heard say. And I'm like, what does that even mean? Like, do you not know who your son...
She knew specifics about them.
Yeah.
They had children. They have a red pickup truck.
Yeah.
And she didn't know their names.
I don't believe... I mean, all my research has said was that they couldn't find... I don't know. Like, maybe this person moved. I'm not sure why they couldn't find them. But I'm like, that seems like a pretty key... There's 3 stories of a red pickup truck.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, okay, like you said, how common is it? It might be really common. Who knows? But... It's just weird that these 3 people who, or I guess 4 people, who don't know each other are all saying that they've seen this red pickup truck at some point. That has to do with the boys.
For sure that the police are not putting out into the public, hey, we're looking for a red pickup truck.
I don't know that for sure, but it was something that multiple sources that I had researched were like, this is weird.
Okay.
Now, who knows? Right. I mean, I don't know. Who knows what the police said?
Right.
Was it like, hey, you didn't happen to see? I don't know what the, interrogation tactics of the police were at the time. So, let's talk about Gary. Gary was not found. Ever. To this day. No one knows where he is. As I said before, he was the most capable out of the 5 men. He was in the army. Before he was medicated, he was known to take drugs. But that was probably a form of self-medication.
Yes.
Before he was medicated, he would be known to get into, like, violent altercations with other people. He would get into bar fights. He would scream at kids. He had disdain for women. He once broke into a couple's home and stood in the doorway of their bedroom.
Oh, God.
And when they were like, hey, what are you doing here? He said he needed to get a ring back from them to give to Satan, and that they were in his house and they owed him money.
How did they get him out?
I don't know.
Oh my God.
I think he was probably known by the police at this time to be like, okay, he's obviously something's wrong. And then he once told someone else. Now, again, like, so these people are like character witnesses.
Right.
So, not that anyone would intentionally lie, but, I mean, they might.
Yeah.
But you can only trust what people say so far. One witness said that he said he had a dream on several occasions that he and several other people would disappear. But he also told this person that he dreamed about spaceships and people from outer space.
Yeah.
I mean, I personally would probably just chalk it up to unmedicated schizophrenia.
Yes.
He once walked from his grandmother's house in Portland, Oregon, to Yuba County, which is a 557-mile trip.
Like, did he plan it? Or he was just like, I'm out?
I think he just was like, I'm out.
Holy. Okay.
Because he survived off of dog food.
Oh, no.
And stealing milk off of people's porches. Which, I mean, if you're gonna do it, that's you're a survivor. So, Gary was, I believe I had already stated that Gary was medicated 2 years before the disappearance. So, he had held down a job. Like I said, he's no longer in trouble with the law. The medication was working. Now, Gary's mom would say that he could probably go like a month without his medication before things would start to get bad again. His stepfather disagreed and said it would be more like 2 weeks. And then he would start to talk to himself. So,
I was gonna say, I think a month, especially in the 70s.
Yeah.
I can't imagine the meds are exactly like we have today, but yeah, I don't think it takes long for them to start wearing off.
I mean, if you think about, I'll be transparent. I'm on SSRIs, and even like a day feels like it messes me up.
My prescription was all messed up, and I Googled how many days until you start to have withdrawals, and it was like 1 to 3.
Yeah.
Like, oh no.
Yeah, and I would imagine, I don't know what kind of medications they have for schizophrenia at the time, but any sort of medication that clearly was helping this person is probably pretty potent. Like,
yes.
Yeah. And who knows? That's just as long as it takes people to realize that you're off your medication.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure he would feel it right away. So Gary also had a connection with the town bully. Now,
This is such a small town. There's a town drunk.
Yeah.
Everybody knows Gary. in the town, and there's a town bully.
There's a town bully named Gary.
Oh.
Gary Whiteley.
Okay.
Now, someone said town bully. I think it was just like a personal bully. It was his sister's ex-husband.
Okay.
Gary Whiteley. Gary Whiteley would later become a pastor, but an individual in his church would say that one time he confessed that he had been responsible for 2 out of the 5 boys' disappearance. However, this person was not present at the time he supposedly said this.
Hearsay.
Yeah. So...
That also feels like it doesn't make any sense.
No.
How are you responsible for 2 out of 5?
No, but also, I only bring up this person, but also, Gary had a past with some people in the town. Like, yes, he was medicated for 2 years. He was good. But people don't forget that you, like, started fights with them. He did take drugs at some point, so he may have known, like... kind of the local. And like I said, he was protective of the boys, so we don't know. Like, was there somebody who maybe was causing drama and he kind of was like, well, hey, that's my friend? We don't know. So there are obviously multiple theories. What is your theory before I tell you?
Honestly, I mean, the thing is, the way that they died,
yes,
the ones that they found, versus how they got there in the first place, there's such a huge disconnect. Like, what made them go 70 miles in the wrong direction in the first place? That, I think, is the biggest, unless one of them was like, oh, we get freedom and we're gonna go. But 70 miles, that's not like, let's go down the street.
Yeah.
And I don't, that is the weird, I have no theory as to how they got.
Not to triangulate where we are, but like, what's 70 miles from your house? I mean, you don't accidentally end up 70 miles away from your home.
No.
To have a terrible sense of direction. Right. Which, Jack Madruga, I mean, he had his license. He
drove all the time.
And he drove a truck for the army, so...
Right.
It wasn't new for him.
That is just very strange. I mean, you would have to take so many wrong turns.
Yeah.
And like you said, it was a very direct, from their houses to the game.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Like, if we cut out all of that part, if we cut out how did they get there in the first place, I think it was simply... They kind of, once they were stuck, they kind of got panicked. Maybe Joe was abusive or something. Maybe he was a little involved.
Kimberly. Why are you so good at this?
And then they
You've never heard of this before.
I promise you, I've never heard this.
This is insane. Because now I'm going to tell you about the theories.
Okay.
Which I feel like you could just tell us. Because clearly... So, the theories, let's start with Joseph. Oh, Joe. Maybe the boys were stuck at the same time that Joe was. Mm-hmm. And because he's so unpleasant, maybe his drunkenness kind of caused them to panic and flee because they were stuck themselves.
Right.
But, I mean, how unpleasant was this guy?
And if there was any indication, number one, it sounds like, especially because of the interactions he's had with the people in town, the more he drinks, the more unpleasant he probably is.
Right.
And obviously not all of them, but maybe a couple of them are socially awkward or not what you would typically interact with. Right. Somebody who's just a giant asshole when he's drunk is gonna latch onto that and just be a bully sometimes. Yeah. You know, they catch him pooping on the ground and he gets mad about it.
Maybe, yeah.
So that's totally, to me, very feasible.
Okay. So people were like, okay, maybe he did see a red pickup and he wasn't supposed to see them. And that's maybe why his story was changing too. he had some connections to the drug world.
Right.
So, who knows? Maybe they were the ones that were tailgating him, and that's how he got stuck. So we'll never know, because he's no longer with us.
The red pickup showed up for a drug deal. The boys inadvertently saw it, and they ran them off.
That's actually, let me see. So, I actually have that under Gary.
Okay.
So we'll talk about Gary for a second. You could just do the rest of this, because clearly. No, it's a compliment. So Gary may have... So obviously this is after the fact. People were like, he got into an altercation with somebody at the basketball game. Someone said someone was picking on Jack Hewitt. And Gary was mad because he was protective. And then maybe the bully followed them up the mountain and they fled before the person could catch up with them.
Yeah.
Maybe that person was in a red pickup truck. Who knows? Maybe that's why Jack Madruga's body was found with the keys in his clothes.
Oh.
So he had taken the keys.
Oh my gosh.
But maybe they felt like they didn't have time to push it out of the... You know, what are you going to do? Go back down the mountain and then... I mean, myself, I sort of feel like that's the most plausible. Like, maybe they got into a verbal altercation. Maybe these people were dicks. And they felt like... Although the only thing is, like, you know, if that was from the basketball game, they felt that they had enough time to go to the convenience store and get snacks. I mean, maybe it was at the convenience store. Maybe Gary wanted to get high before their big game the next day. And maybe there was a drug dealing altercation with that person and the same thing happened.
And not to say that the family would know specifically, but especially if he were hiding it.
Yeah.
But was there any indication that he was periodically using, even though he had been medicated?
I don't know. But I mean, getting high could be like, let's smoke some weed. You know what I mean? Like, at that time, obviously, weed was not legal. But it just seems weird. It's a weird place to go with that, I think. Some people think, and including some of the parents of the other boys, that Gary might have killed some of the men. Because where is his body? Now, they had found 3 blankets and a flashlight that was discarded, which people were thinking maybe once Ted died, Gary just took off to try to figure out, like... I mean, at that time, Ted's beard was around 8 to 13 weeks of growth. So how many months is that, like?
So he would have died somewhere between, like, April and May.
Right. And then, you know, these motorcyclists that found the trailer, or not found, but checked on the trailer, were going up in June because that's when the snow line was gone. I mean, maybe at that point he was like, okay, it's warm enough, maybe I'll my friend's gone, maybe I'll set out. And I don't know if I mentioned this before, but there were people who thought, okay, Gary at least took care of Ted, because he had sores on his feet and obviously wasn't able to walk. I mean, they clearly switched shoes, and once he was gone, I mean, maybe he just left the trailer. I'm still on the side of, like, Gary's a good guy, or Gary at least cared about his friends. I don't personally think Gary did anything terrible to them.
I mean, realistically, though, the only one we're not super sure of how he died is Jack with the jacket.
Yeah. So their autopsies, or I guess, I don't know. The death certificates will say the 3 men that were found outside died of hypothermia. That's what they assume to be the case.
How would they be able to tell that from Jack?
I mean, I think it's just like a guess.
Have a spine.
I know. Yeah.
That's the...
And maybe he fell, like Jack Hewitt fell when they were however many miles away from the trailer, and then maybe Gary was carrying Ted at that point because his feet were in such bad shape.
Are we on to theories yet? Or there more? Because I have so many.
So, I just want to say, so those are the theory. I mean, and of course, you have the group of people that are like, it's supernatural. They were chased by a Wendigo. That, which I think is pretty insulting to the surviving family members. Because it's like, right. Yeah, they probably, I mean, I can't even say probably because who knows. But it seems likely to me that they were chased up this mountain. That's what I think.
Right. Otherwise, why would you leave the car at all?
Yeah. So I have some final questions, unless you want to talk about your theories.
No. Mostly it's questions. Things that, like, some of these theories sound good, and then I'm like, but why that? So go ahead.
Yes. So some of the questions that people have asked, why weren't the trailers initially searched when they had found the 69 Montego? So there was likely miscommunication between the mountain rangers and the police. The rangers said, yeah, we told you there were trailers up there. And the police said they never were told about that. So I don't know if it was intentional miscommunication or whatever. But I mean, they could have, after the ice storm, they could have at least found them much sooner. Yeah. At least two of the men, if you think about it.
Right.
At least them being in the trailer, they must have survived past.
I mean, he had beard growth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the another question is, why weren't the men utilizing the heating elements in the trailer? Some say they had plenty of books that they could have burned, but also, if you burn paper, how long is that going to last?
Right.
And they had said, at least in the reports, there wasn't any notes about the trailers having like a hearth. So maybe you would have had to go outside to start a fire. Wood outside would have likely been wet at the time.
Oh, yeah.
Gary had written in the margins of the books some self-affirmations, which was part of his like therapy. So I think he probably had known, like, okay, I'm out of medication. Let me I'm trying to take care of my friend, which is so freaking stressful. Like,
right.
Yeah.
Like, if anything's going to trigger you for it to flare up, it's going to be a situation like that.
Yeah. Right. You're starving. It's, I mean, even the healthiest, mentally healthy person, it's a strain. And then people thought maybe, they were afraid to start a fire. Maybe they were running from something and they didn't want someone or something to know where they were. And we can discuss how you feel, but we'll just say the last thing is the search was called off on June 19th of that year, and we still don't know. I mean, it's open. The case is technically open, but some witnesses have died, and obviously the trail is pretty cold, and as far as we know, nobody has ever seen Gary Mathias.
I mean, Gary walked 500 miles.
Yeah.
So I am going to tell myself that he was like, this is not looking good. Spring is coming at that point.
Yeah, what did we say? 13 weeks. How many months is that? You said it would be like, it would bring us to like May.
Yeah, so it would have been like just over three months. So like the end, right?
Yeah. Oh, so like if it's just, close. I know, but if you're, I mean, at that, obviously, his feet were not in good shape.
I know.
And then, I mean, they had said that he died from
pneumonia.
Pulmonary, from pneumonia, so
he might have been sick for like a bit.
A long time, yeah.
So I sort of feel like Gary probably said, I don't think staying here makes any sense. I'm going to go and see what I can do.
Mm-hmm.
But at this point, he's potentially 3 months off of
his meds.
Schizophrenia meds.
Yep.
I'm kind of hoping he's like living his best life in the woods.
That's what
somewhere.
I was thinking. I mean,
that's what I'm going to tell myself.
You know, I feel like it kind of makes me really sad that some of the... I mean, who knows what happened, but some of the parents of the other boys think that he had something to do with it. And I just feel like that's... I mean, maybe it was the biases from the sources that I have seen. He was violent in the past.
Right.
But from what other people have said, like, I guess he came in when there was, like, a group of best friends, and he was the last one in, but he had known them for a little bit, and, you know, I mean, I imagine he was just as excited to go to the basketball game the next day.
I don't know. I kind of think, I sort of assumed the parents had reservations about him from the jump.
True.
When they found out that their kids were probably hanging out with him.
Right. I suppose you can't really... I get it. I mean, especially since he's been in trouble with the law.
And again, at the time, mental health, I mean, still not good.
Right.
But, so I see that. I think the saddest part of all of this is that if they had just been able to stay put, they would have been found.
I know.
There was gas in the car.
I know.
So something had to have scared them away.
Yeah.
Do we have any idea? So obviously they know how long it took, approximately how long he was alive in the trailer.
Mm-hmm.
But the ones who were found together.
Yes, Jack.
Do they have any idea how long? Because they had died from hypothermia, so it would have been really hard to tell.
And their bodies were scavenged, and it had been, 4 months that they found them. All the clues were all messed up. I mean, that's the theory, is that on their way to we don't know for sure.
Like, I wonder if they left during the ice storm.
Well, that's...
to try to find help or something.
People were unsure if they ever made it to the trailer. There was no official signs of anyone else other than those two men in the trailer. So they could have died that night. They could have just... I mean, because hypothermia is... You get tired. And then you're like, okay, I'm just going to rest. I'm just going to rest. And then your best friend is like, okay, I'll just hang back with them, catch up with you guys. Mm-hmm. You know, they're on this trail. It's packed down by the snowcat. They know where they're going. Well, they don't know where they're going, but they can see the trail.
Right. It's got to lead to something, hopefully.
So, I mean, and then you just wait with your friend. You get tired, too. You both fall asleep, and you don't wake up. Which is so sad.
Is it that... I guess I've underestimated how quick it can happen.
I mean, so I had said that they were found on that trail 11 miles from the Montego.
So
11 miles.
Like 9 miles away from the trailer.
Yeah. And some of them didn't have jackets on. They didn't have, and...
True.
I mean, it was cold enough for there to be snow. And then an ice storm after that.
Yeah. And the elevation at that point.
Yeah. I mean, and it's dark.
Right.
You don't know where,
right.
Isn't that so sad?
That's such a shame. I know. Joseph
so interesting,
had
though.
To do with it.
See, I
think Joe scared him off. Though, to be honest, I wonder if he would even really be sure of those details at this point. If he could even admit to that. Well, obviously he cannot. Yes. But at the time, if he were still with us, would he even remember the interaction?
I don't know that there was any foul play necessarily. Like, other than somebody chasing them.
Exactly. I don't think anybody hurt these people intentionally.
No.
I think
it was just a series of bad situations where, yeah.
Ugh.
What'd you think?
I mean, it's
fascinating.
It is. It's fascinating. It's frustrating.
Yeah.
beyond words. And I feel like that's true for a lot of missing person cases, because you're like, if you had just made one different choice,
right,
maybe they would have found you the next day.
Right. Or like if there wasn't miscommunication, they were like, we told you there was a trailer. And
right.
They were like, no one ever told us that. And you're like, I mean, you know, just in every situation, in your job, in things, you know, oh, I called that medication in. No, you didn't. Yes, we did. You know, just little things like that just add up to horrific
and
outcome.
The police have a responsibility, I would think, to say explicitly to the mountain rangers, are there any buildings that we should check?
Yeah.
Not just go, well, you didn't mention it.
Right. And like I don't know the details. I don't know who messed up. And also, you know, there's only so many resources that like a small town has. I mean, they worked with a neighboring town as well, but you know, I don't know. I don't know how big this police force is. I don't know how, you know, police mess up all the time. Everybody messes up in their job, at least, you know, so it's hard to place total blame on anybody, but
oh yeah, certainly. I think it was just a perfect storm of bad things that happened all together. Right. And unfortunately, like, Joseph wouldn't even have been there if he was not a drunk who couldn't get his shit together and stay on the road. But so also, is it that it's great because he was there as a witness, but obviously he was not a good witness. So like, what the hell? It's just like...
And the thing is, like, was there legitimately somebody running people off the road? Like maybe the boys were behind him and they were the ones that were scared because somebody else was chasing them and they ran him off the road. Who knows?
We didn't even think, I mean, I didn't, but if they were being maybe a little aggressive, maybe he was driving kind of shitty and they were being a little aggressive, and then he ran off the road, turns around and says, you know, gets into a fight with them about that.
Right. I mean, who knows? Like, but the other thing is, why were they even going in that direction?
That is the biggest, aside from Gary just being missing entirely.
Yeah.
What on earth were they doing there?
Right. And their parents were like, they were very routine. I cannot diagnose anybody, but for people who may be on the spectrum, they like routines. They don't like to stray from what they know. Why?
And the thought, it was Ted's mom, right? That said he might know somebody with a pickup. So, and the guy said he thought he recognized Ted at his cabin.
Yes.
The only thing that makes sense is like maybe Ted didn't realize how far away it was and was like, hey guys, let's go look at this pool. I don't know.
But he doesn't like the woods. He doesn't like the outdoors. A lot of them didn't like the outdoors.
I mean,
so maybe he was just like, look, if there was somebody chasing them, maybe we'll lose them because I know this place that we can go. They're certainly not going to follow us. And it's like, I don't know.
And maybe they wouldn't have realized what the state of the road was at the time.
Right.
If they're not in elevation and then suddenly you get
4,000
feet up and it's a bunch of snow.
I imagine. I don't know what time of year that guy had said he saw them, but I'm sure it wasn't winter time. Whenever deer hunting season is, I suppose. But
that's just...
I know.
I don't know. I'm going to tell myself that Gary has done like his own personal episode of Alone.
Yeah.
And he has built himself like a really nice little log shelter. And he's just, you know.
Yeah, but unmedicated?
If he's away from people, maybe it's not as
terrible. True. I don't know, but...
Right? Like, you know, I don't get into the...
You see why I didn't want to wait?
But
you see why I soldiered on to talk about
I know. No, it was fascinating. Frustrating. We have a few of those.
Yeah. Yeah, so what would you call it? It's not really... It is a mysterious disappearance, but what is it? Like, they were found. I suppose it's the mysterious disappearance of Gary.
Yeah.
And what happened to the Yuba County Five.
I'm really surprised that I haven't heard of it and that there was so much
details.
But also, they were getting tips from all over the place. Like, so clearly the story had been...
international at one
international.
point. Yeah.
And I've not ever heard of it.
I'm so glad, because I was like, she totally knows about this.
No. I don't, mysterious disappearances frustrate me.
I imagine.
No,
but then that's the thing. It's like, it's not really true crime, because we don't know that a crime was for sure committed.
I mean, Joe committed a crime.
Yes. he not enough to be a part of...
just not the crime.
Yeah. He's committed many crimes, but... Oh, Joe. Shonesy. I kept calling him Shonesy in my head.
Joe Show.
Joe Show.
Thanks for listening to Relatively Weird. If you like what you hear, make sure to leave us a review and follow us on your podcast player of choice. You can also find us at RelativelyWeirdThePod on Instagram. If you have any stories you'd like us to talk about, send us an email at relatively weirdthepod@gmail.com. See you next week.